I want to come on here and talk about a YouTuber that seems to get a lot of shit online. And he's not specifically a YouTuber, although he is on YouTube, just a social media presence. And he gets a lot of shit from people. And I'm talking about Jett Franzen, right? Now, I actually don't dislike Jett at all. I actually really like his content. I think he's very good at speaking. I think, there's a decent amount of thought behind his videos, and I don't necessarily think he's wrong with a lot of the points that he makes. I think that, some of them might be uncomfortable to hear, so obviously he's going to get shit, but that doesn't make what he's saying necessarily wrong. However, there is an issue with his content, and I'm going to try to address that in this video, at least what I personally think, right? Because all the hate that I see online with Jett, there's not really any people refuting his points or, there's no rebuttals. It's just people trauma dumping and just getting mad in the comments or just straight up making fun of him, right? And so I do want to make it pretty clear that this isn't a hate video. Like, I actually like his content. This is not a hate video. This is just like a actual critique, like something that I see that I think is wrong with his content or maybe an issue and nothing more, right? Like, it's not like there's anything personal. I've already said a bunch, like, I like his content, right? But the issue that I think comes with it is that his points are very generalized. He kind of reminds me of the Underground Man from Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And this is even a thing that he himself has said multiple times, that he seemed to have lived more in his head than in reality, right? And spent a lot of time in isolation. And isolation's very powerful, right? I wouldn't say it's neither good or bad, the effects that it has, but they are certainly powerful. I think they can be either. And it all depends on why you isolate and what you're doing in isolation. And I think generally it's bad because people tend to isolate for the wrong reasons. They do it as a kind of trauma response. But the impacts of it are pretty powerful nevertheless, right? For one, your view becomes kind of black and white. Your view of the world becomes very generalized, right? Things are either this or that. And the reality of the world is that there's lots of layers and lots of depth. There's things that can apply generally, but there's always exceptions to every rule. Maybe not always, but generally there is, right? At least if we're talking about people and society, and that's what Jett's content seems to be a lot about. But when you spend lots of time in isolation and you come to certain viewpoints, they don't actually get tested in the real world. So it seems like, let's say he's to say that all people that don't read are stupid. This is a hypothetical. I don't think that that's at all true. But just for the sake of the hypothetical, let's say that someone makes that claim that doesn't go out very much. When all that they're telling themselves is that people that don't read are stupid, and that never actually gets tested in reality, that starts to become the reality in that person's head, right? So perhaps there could be some general truth to it. Again, I'm not saying there is, but this is just for the sake of a hypothetical. Let's say 7 out of 10 people that don't read are stupid. There's a general truth, but it's not an absolute truth, right? There's still going to be those 3 people that are smart. And all that I'm really getting at is that in isolation, things start to seem more black and white and absolute than they are. So to a person that's extremely isolated, if you don't read, you're stupid. That's just how it seems. Again, that's just not reality. There's always exceptions to every rule. There's lots of depth. There's lots of layers. And so I think that's the main issue with Jett's content and his claims, is that he spent a lot of time in isolation, so his points are very generalized. They're almost black and white. I do think there's a general truth to most of the things that he says, but you have to have some nuance, right? And you have to have context also. But overall, I think he's a pretty good speaker. I definitely like a lot of his viewpoints. I just think that they require some nuance. And I do not at all think all the hate that he's getting online is warranted. It's like if you have an actual point to give that rebuttals one of his ideas or some kind of criticism, then go ahead and give it. But if you're just going to mindlessly hate because you don't like what he said, and I say mindlessly as in just hate to hate, I think that's just stupid.